The Canon 50mm. This lens is 95% of DSLR users' first lens purchase outside of their kit lens. Now, a lot of people refer to it as the plastic fantastic or the nifty 50, but I just say it's bloody good value for money. Here's why. So let's start with the facts. This is an f1.8 50mm prime lens. Oh, and side note, this entire review is shot on my Canon T3i, which has a cropped sensor, so keep that in mind. So it's a 50mm prime lens, which means it has a fixed focal length of 50mm, and on my T3i, this effectively becomes a fixed focal length of 85mm, which makes it unlike a zoom lens where you can change your focal length by zooming in and out. Being a prime allows a lens to get that super fast aperture speed like the f1.8 this lens has, and this makes it both great for getting those cinematic images with a shallow depth of field, but it also makes it easier to shoot when you're in low light conditions. Moving on to the build of this lens, and as you can probably tell by the nicknames it inherits, this thing is made purely out of plastic with not an ounce of metal to be found anywhere at all. Yes, this does make it feel incredibly cheap, but that's what makes it so cheap in the first place. With a price tag of $125, it's pretty hard to complain. Now, this means it is very lightweight, which can be a good thing, particularly if you're looking to make your travel kit as light as possible, but it may also be a deterrent if you're someone who likes supporting your camera's sensor with weight. So with a lens being this cheap, image quality must take a beating, right? Wrong. For $125, image quality is supreme. Sure, if you're shooting wide open at f1.8, there is a small amount of softening that takes place, but it's not even as noticeable as my Samyang 24mm, and as I said in that review, you really only notice it when you're filming light sources such as a mobile phone, and so in those contexts, stopping it down a couple of stops will get rid of the issue completely. One thing worth mentioning is that depending on the environment of your shot, your bokeh or out of focus areas can have this slight barrel curve look to them. Now, this is certainly a distinguished look, and you might not want this to be in every single photo or shot you take, but personally, I really like the effect. For the most part, it's never really noticeable in my tech videos. I think the effect comes into play when your subject is a really great distance away from the background. So what are the negatives associated with owning this lens? Well, for one, given the plastic build, rack focus shots are near impossible to achieve. Unlike my two Samyang lenses, which have silky smooth, really long focus rings that make it super easy to rack focus, the Canon 50mm has this super short, very cheap plastic ring, and when you couple that with the fact that it has a reasonably long focal length of either 50mm on a full frame or 85mm on a crop sensor, the jitteriness of the cheap focus ring is amplified all the more. Another difficulty with this sort of a lens is related to those of you who, like me, require filming yourself for your videos. Because of the long focal length, it makes it pretty tricky, mainly because you have to sit or stand a fair distance away from the camera to get decent framing in the first place, which therefore makes it quite difficult to make sure you're in focus. And as it is with most prime lenses, this Canon 50mm has no image stabilization, which makes handheld filming fairly difficult without some sort of support system or stabilization applied in post-production. Now, what's something you notice about these three cons? Well, none of them are photography related. To be honest, I can't see a single negative related to this lens if you're purely a photographer. The other thing is that each of these negatives pale in comparison to the pro that this lens is only $125. As well as that, this is a great focal length to have in your kit, and I certainly find myself using it more and more in all of my YouTube videos, and I absolutely love shooting with it. So for me, it completely makes sense as to why this is such a popular first lens purchase for so many DSLR owners. It made a perfect companion to the kit lens that I used to use, and it still makes for a perfect companion to my 14mm and 24mm Samyang lenses. Whether you're starting out as a photographer or videographer, or perhaps even you have a fair amount of experience and are just looking for something extra to add to the kit, this, in my opinion, is a great lens purchase. If you have any questions regarding this lens, please feel free to put them in the comments below, but aside from that, thanks for watching and I'll catch you later.